Welcome to Complete BS, the official podcast of couch coaches everywhere. Not just football. It's every sport that ruins your parlay, wrecks your fantasy week, and still brings you back for more. Buzzer beaters, blown leads, and brackets and flames. Yeah, we're all over it. Unfiltered takes, armchair analysis, and enough bold opinions to fill a playbook. Hosted by Brian Schmuck, sports junkie, the Saban of stats, and your official voice of I could coach better than that. Let's go.
Welcome, Couch Coach Nation. We had an exciting week, too. You've got some teams that are starting to show who they are. Keep in mind, last year, Notre Dame lost in week 2 to unranked Northern Illinois, and they didn't lose again until the national championship game. So if you're a fan of a team with one loss, you're not out of it, but your margin of error is much smaller. Tonight, my TV will be on Colorado at Houston. Colorado's quarterback situation has been fluid so far. They named a new starter this week, and they've played 3 quarterbacks in 2 games and are 1-1. Houston settled at quarterback with Connor Weigman. He seems to be like in his 37th year of college football. He's been around forever. They're at home with a 5.5-point favorite. That seems to be the play, but maybe Colorado found something with Ryan Staub at quarterback. Because of that, I'm not sure where to go on the game itself, but the total at 45.5, I like the over tonight. The total's gone up a couple of points, so I'm not alone in thinking that's the way to go. If you want to torture yourself tonight, you can always tune in to Kansas State at Arizona. AV, you've been hard on Kansas State early this year, and Arizona's only a 1.5-point favorite at home. Does somebody in Vegas know something that we don't? What do you think, AV?
They must, and that makes me a little nervous. Speaking of Colorado, Dylan Edwards, the running back that transferred from there, he's 50-50 at best to play for Kansas State, and it's still a 1.5-point spread. So somebody knows something.
I'm going to be watching Kansas State this year. When Edwards comes back, maybe that'll shift where we look at Kansas State. But right now, if you want god-awful football, watch Kansas State. All right, let's get into some noon games, some good football. And let's start out with the college game day game of the week, Georgia at Tennessee. Georgia's won the last 8 matchups, and it hasn't been close. 7 out of the last 8 games have been a blowout. In 2022, Tennessee was able to keep it to 14 points. Georgia's a 3.5-point favorite. I see a lot of late money coming in on Georgia and pushing that line up. If you like Georgia, get in early before this line climbs. I like the under a lot in this game at 49.5. It was 50.5 earlier in the week, so I'm not alone in liking the under. I'm not calling it, but the Georgia offense, they've been slow to start this year. Tennessee, they've scored a lot of points. I don't see them doing that against the Georgia defense. This feels like an underplay. If you can tease it a little bit and get a few extra, even better. Tennessee's going to be without All-American candidate corner Jeremiyah McCoy. Their number 2 corner, Ricky Gibson, also out. This is huge for Gunnar Stockton to try and establish the pass. He's yet to hit 230 yards passing on the season. Stockton should have more success downfield if he's able to work the middle and find Oscar Delp underneath. For Tennessee, keep running the ball. They're averaging 261 yards per game. They're 25-0 since 2022 when they rushed for over 185 yards. Heupel, run the ball. Joey Aguilar has been solid for Tennessee, keeping them efficient, getting the ball out to your playmakers. Through 2 games, this looks like Tennessee's the better team. Tennessee's playing at home. Georgia's been inconsistent. The quarterback's been inconsistent. Everything points towards a Tennessee upset. But Kirby Smart's on the other sidelines, and he's got a really strong pedigree of defense and winning. Where are you seeing this one, AV?
This is a weekend where there's a lot of good matchups, like Notre Dame and Texas A&M, Florida, LSU, Miami, USF, the games we'll talk about. But this one to me is the best, if not the most entertaining, at least the most interesting to see how the SEC is going to start to shake out. And it feels like UT is set up to win this game. Georgia, the quarterback hasn't found a lot of success. It's at Tennessee. Tennessee's been looking good. I think Tennessee has an advantage at quarterback. I think Joey Aguilar is actually a pretty decent quarterback. So I'm going to go with Rocky Top just because they're at home and I don't have a great feel. And when it's this close, I tend to take the home team. But I'm going to go with Tennessee to win the game outright, but that's just a hunch.
I wouldn't be I'm surprised if this game went either way. But again, I go back to Kirby, and I trust Kirby more than I trust Heupel. So in the words of legendary Larry Munson, we just stepped on their face with a hobnail boot and crushed their face. Give me Georgia 21-17. All right. Now the game that should be where College Game Day is at, USF at Miami, 4:30 on the CW. First, can I say that the ACC is a joke having this game on the CW?
You can say that, yeah.
This is where College Game Day should be. If it wasn't for an ESPN Love Fest, you should never be on the CW when you've got number 18 versus number 5. All right, rant over. USF, they're looking for their second ever win versus the Canes. They're 1-6. Their lone win coming in an overtime thriller in 2010. Last year, Cam Ward won this game 50-15, but he's in the NFL. And Alex Golish says, this isn't the same old South Florida, my brother. Ranked versus ranked, Miami 5, USF number 18, and yet Miami's still a 17.5-point favorite. Vegas does not respect the Bulls at all. Miami needs to guard against the upset. They already have a top 10 win versus Notre Dame. This should be a game they win, and win convincingly. Anything less than a cover makes you question who they are as a team. Notre Dame was flat versus Miami, and then Bethune-Cookman wasn't a test. I still don't know who Miami is, and they've got Florida next week. USF, they're playing with house money right now. They've got 2 top 25 upsets, and if they win this game, they vault probably into the top 10. Byron Brown's the guy that stirs the drink for the Bulls. He accounted for over 4,000 yards in 2023, and he's back after being injured in 2024. He leads Golish's up-tempo offense with 473 yards passing and 109 yards on the ground through 2 games. USF has to play within the moment and not let the success of the past 2 weeks get away from them. Historically, they played the Big Three in Florida tough, but Miami's not going to be overlooking them after what they did last week against Florida. Tell me what you got, AV.
First, let me say that this is going to be the CW's biggest moment since the Buffy the Vampire Slayer finale. All right, so don't take that away from them. I think you hit the nail on the head on a couple of things. One is Boise went into USF overconfident. I think Florida went into USF thinking that win against Boise was cute, but you're coming to the swamp and we're going to handle business, and that didn't happen. USF will have Miami's full attention because they have 2 ranked wins and now they're a ranked team, and it's a chance for Miami to thump their chest a little bit. USF secondary ranks near the bottom nationally, 20-plus yards per play allowed. Miami's got an advantage up front. I think they're going to pound the ball, then hit some stuff over the top. I think Miami controls this game. I'm predicting Miami to win 38-13. I agree with you on another point. I think Miami's a good team. I don't know how good they are. I don't know if they're top 5 worthy, like they're ranked.
I think USF has the advantage at quarterback. Byron Brown versus Carson Beck, I give Brown the advantage. Miami's playing at home. They're going to have the edge in speed and depth. If this is close, rest assured, Mario Cristobal is going to find a way to screw it up. That said, I think, again, the depth, the speed, this is a different team, a different caliber of athlete. Miami wins 35-17. And then we move Texas A&M at Notre Dame. I'm lost on this game. Notre Dame was off last week, and we only have the Miami game to go off of. Against Miami, they ignored Jeremiyah Love for 3 quarters and didn't wake up until the 4th quarter, and by then it was too late. Who shows up for Notre Dame? The first 3-quarter team or the 4th quarter team? If it's the first 3 quarters, this game's over and I'll turn it off. If it's the 4th quarter Notre Dame team where they actually have a pulse and they're going to utilize their best player, then we've got a ball game. Texas A&M hasn't been tested with wins over UT San Antonio and Utah State with 18 and 22-point wins. Okay, big deal. What do we know about Texas? And Marcel Reed, he's the Aggies' star quarterback. He got a little hurt in the 3rd quarter and came out against Utah State, but he says he'll be there on Saturday against the Irish. Does that mean he's 100%, or is he going to be a little bit less of normal? We'll see how he looks in pregame and if he's able to do everything that he does with the football. Texas A&M, they should start early running Le'Veon Moss. Last year, they had great success with him in the lineup. Possible lingering injury to Reed. If they can lean on Moss and then use Reed sparingly on the ground, I think that's their best outcome. Notre Dame's a 6.5-point favorite, And from what I've seen, I'm not really sure. I think this game should be closer to a pick 'em. What do you like, AV?
I think Notre Dame's going to come out as the fourth quarter Notre Dame and feed Jeremiyah Love the ball because they were ridiculed for not doing that. They probably look back and realize it was a mistake, and they're not going to make the same mistake in 2 games in a row. They've had an off week to fix all of that. But that said, Mike Elko's a really good defensive mind, and I don't think they're just going to run Jeremiyah Love down Texas A&M's throat. They could. He's that good, but Texas A&M's got some good linebackers. They've got a good defense, and they'll slow them down, which then makes you turn to C.J. Carr. And I'm not saying he was bad in his first start, but can he win a game for you? I don't know. On the other side, Marcel Reed, he's dynamic. How well can he throw the ball? I'm going to go against the odds here and pick Texas A&M to win outright. And the reason I say it's against the odds is Texas A&M, their 0-13 road record versus ranked opponents since 2014. They haven't won a road game against a ranked opponent in a long time. Notre Dame's 12-3 in night games at home since 2017. But those are just trends. Texas A&M with Mike Elko is going to come out, slow down Jeremiyah Love, put the game in C.J. Carr's hands. On the other side, they're going to score just enough with Marcel Reed. I'm going to pick Texas A&M in the upset. Notre Dame starts off 0-2, probably finishes the year on a nice little run.
You give me a banged-up quarterback with a team that I think has the better defense, Notre Dame, and that team's playing at home. I'm going to go with Notre Dame. Close. Irish, 21-20. All right, we've got Florida, LSU. I'll give you my look at that game later on with All-American from LSU, Todd McClure. What's your take on this one?
We talked about how we didn't know how good Miami is. I don't know how good LSU is. Like, they beat Clemson 17-10. Clemson looked like nothing the next week against Troy, especially for the first half. LSU was okay in the game against Louisiana Monroe. Then they come into this game. Braylon Moore is their starting center. He's questionable. Their big 6'7" tight end, Trey Green, he's out. Florida's defense has given up 17 points or less in 6 games in a row. I guess USF broke that streak with 18 points last week, but they don't give up a lot of points the last 6 or 7 games. LSU hasn't scored a lot of points this year. I think being at home at night, LSU not having the USF loss to deal with like Florida does, probably has all of the advantages off the field, but I think this is going to be close, man. Wouldn't shock me if Florida upset them, but with all the instability going on around Florida right now, I don't know if they're disciplined enough to lock in, block out the noise, play disciplined football. Penalties kill them all the time. Undisciplined play kills them. But if they come out with emotion and play discipline, if Lagway plays well, they could win this game, I think. But I'm going to pick LSU to win it in a close one, 28-24.
All right, that makes sense. I see the logic there. Those are the big games of the weekend. What do you got sitting in AV's book club?
All right, I got 4 games in AV's book club. The first one we go with is I'm going to take Temple plus 24 at home versus Oklahoma. Do you know who Temple's offensive coordinator is, Brian?
It escapes me right now.
His name is Tyler Walker. You don't know him because he's the first-year offensive coordinator for Temple. Nobody knows him. Last year, he was the first-year offensive coordinator for Montana State. And in his first year as offensive coordinator of Montana State, they led the FCS in points per game at over 40, in total yards and in rushing yards, and his quarterback threw for 31 touchdowns. They went 15-1, made it to the national championship game. So he's 36 years old. He can score points. He can run the ball. Oklahoma's coming into a trap spot. They're coming off a big win. They're on the road the very next week. I'm not predicting Temple to win, but give me an offensive coordinator who can run the ball and is competent, plus 24 points at home after a big game for the other team, and I'm taking that all day.
Really?
Temple.
What's the next game?
Next game is Duke minus 1.5 at Tulane. You know who Tulane's quarterback was last year, don't you, B?
I sure do.
All right, he's coming home, and he ain't coming home to play. He's coming home to take care of business. So, a homecoming of sorts for Mensa. He's going to play well. I thought they hung well with Illinois last week, but they had 5 turnovers, 4 of them in the red zone. If they clean that up, I think they're going to cover the small spread. I know you like Summerall, the coach for Tulane. He is a good coach, and that worries me a little bit, but I'm going to go with Duke here on the road with the small spread. Next game is Oregon minus 27.5 at Northwestern. Speaking of Tulane, Northwestern lost to Tulane by 20. That means they're going to lose to Oregon by at least 28. At least. To me, Oregon's the best team in the country in terms of just impressive wins and how they look. That whole offense is looking good. The defense shuts you down. They're going to blow Northwestern out. And then the last game, we talked about it earlier, Arizona minus 1.5 against Kansas State. Arizona's 2-0 against the spread this year. Kansas State's 0-3 against the spread. Dylan Edwards Edwards is questionable to doubtful. Coach said 50-50 at best. The one thing that worries me here is actually the point spread. You brought it up earlier. Like, I don't understand it, but I'm going to ride with it. I'm going to fade K-State until they start winning. And so Arizona minus the 1.5 at home.
I like that pick. With Kansas State, the way they've shown themselves to be hot garbage, I think you got to go the Arizona route with this one. My bonus pick was going to be Oregon State at Texas Tech and take the over, but that total's been increasing throughout the week, so I'm not the only one that's thinking that. So I'm going to keep the game the same and just pivot and give me Texas Tech minus 23.5. When I look at what the Red Raiders have done, they've scored 67 versus Arkansas Pine Bluff, 62 versus Kent State. Oregon State scored in losing efforts 15 and 27, both against FBS teams. I think Oregon State can score 10 to 14 points, but no more than 21. So Texas Tech would need to score at max 45, and I don't think they have any problem hitting 45. So give me Texas Tech laying the 23.5 as my bonus pick. Stay tuned, everybody. We'll be right back with LSU All-American Todd McClure. We're going to get to know him a little bit and then talk LSU Florida. Welcome back, Couch Coach Nation. I'm excited to have All-American center from LSU, Todd McClure, to join us on Complete BS. Todd is a native from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and he was a cornerstone of the Tigers' offensive line, earning a reputation as a tough, technically sound center who would dominate in both the run and pass game. During his time at LSU, McClure helped anchor an offensive line that powered the Tigers to multiple bowl appearances and laid the foundation for LSU's rise to a perennial SEC power. He was selected to the All-SEC team in 1997 and 98. In 1998, he was voted All-American by the American Football Coaches Association. After college, McClure was selected in the NFL draft by the Atlanta Falcons, where he enjoyed a remarkable 13-season career as a starter. Known for his durability, McClure started every game for the Falcons from 1999 to 2011. In 2022, he was inducted into the Atlanta Falcons Ring of Honor, joining 4 of his Falcon teammates, Matt Ryan, Warwick Dunn, Roddy White, and Jesse Tuggle. Todd, welcome to Complete BS.
Thank you guys for having me. I look forward to talking a little football.
Absolutely. Well, let's jump in because I'm curious. You're from Baton Rouge. Was it always going to be LSU, or did you look around?
No, absolutely. I grew up a Tiger fan, grew up right here in the shadows of Tiger Stadium, and always said if LSU offered, that's where I was going. I really wasn't highly recruited coming out of high school. All the in-state schools I had offers from, and the only other school I said I would have gone to if they would have offered, or at least looked at, was Notre Dame. Notre Dame was hot at that time. You always saw them on TV. So I never had to make that decision. Notre Dame never offered, and LSU did, and the rest is history.
Absolutely. Hometown, staying there. I read that you were going to be redshirted as a freshman, but due to an injury, you were pushed into duty early. Was there that oh crap moment getting your first action so young in your career, or did you feel like you were ready to go day one?
I felt like I was ready. I came in, and originally I played tight end and defensive end in high school, but was recruited as a center, defensive tackle by some schools. So when I got to LSU, I was 6 on the depth chart, day one of training camp, and then gradually worked my way up. Guys got hurt. But I think at the very beginning, because I had meetings with Coach Sonardo and my O-line coach, they saw something in me, and they didn't think I would progress as fast as I did. They had a decision to make early on. We played Texas A&M. Our first game was at A&M, and I think they wanted to put me in there in the starting lineup, but we had an older guy who had more experience. So they let it ride out and see how long it would last, and to see if they could redshirt me, because I think they wanted to keep me around for as long as they could. And then Marcus Carmouche, our starting center, got hurt. I got in for a couple snaps in a North Texas game late, but my first real live bullets was at Alabama in that environment. It wasn't Alabama that it is today, but it was still an SEC matchup, and I hadn't looked back from there.
So we all know Saturday night in Death Valley, that's a huge environment. What's your most vivid memory from your LSU playing days? Is it Saturday night, road trips, something like that?
I don't think you're going to like this one too much. It was 1997 when y'all came in #1, and nobody really gave us a shot. And to go in, the energy in that stadium that night when we took the early lead was just unbelievable. And with my teammates, we were able to pull that victory out. And that's one of my fondest memories as an LSU Tiger.
Absolutely. And you're not hurting my feelings at all. I went to Florida State and Georgia is where I got my degree. So
Okay. There we go.
you're not hurting my feelings. I try to keep it neutral, though.
There you go.
A lot of fans that watch football, they know that the center is doing a lot in pre-snap. Can you kind of walk through a little bit from when you break the huddle and you've got the play call to just before you snap the ball, what you're looking at, what you're seeing, how you're calling blocking assignments, and take us a little behind the scenes there?
Yeah, absolutely. The biggest thing once you get to play and you're walking to the line of scrimmage is to identify the Mike linebacker, the middle linebacker, routes, protections, run blocking schemes, everything is based off of where that Mike linebacker or who that Mike linebacker is. So it's important that all 11 guys on offense are on the same page. When I got later on in my career, I started watching the sideline as my quarterback was calling the play. I'm looking at the other team's sideline to see personnel changes, to see signals by a D-line coach or D coordinator, what he's signaling his guys. As I got more comfortable, I was able to see line stunts coming from the sideline before it happened at live action. I was able to see coverages and tell the quarterback what coverages they were playing. So all those things, as my experience grew, the game seemed to slow down, and it helped everybody around me.
Absolutely. That's amazing. You played with one of the best guards ever in Alan Faneca. What's it like playing next to him, knowing that side's locked down? Because I know if I'm Kevin Falk, I know exactly where I'm running. I'm trying to split right between McClure and Faneca.
It was great, and I owe that guy a lot. He was an ultimate competitor, ultimate pro, played the game the right way. He was a year ahead of me at LSU, and I think having Faneca, having Falk, having guys like Booger McFarland that was at LSU at the same time as me, those scouts came in and they wanted to watch this All-American guard, Alan Faneca. Well, as they're evaluating him or they're evaluating Kevin Falk, they see glimpses of this, short center pop up, and they start to follow me a little bit. And I think having those great guys around me allowed me to get in front of those scouts and some of those programs for them to see what I was capable of.
When we fast forward a little bit to your NFL career, in 2000 with the Falcons, you've got quarterbacks Chris Chandler, Doug Johnson, and Danny Cannell. Not the most fleet-footed quarterbacks out there. And then in 2001, the Falcons draft Michael Vick. And that brings a totally different aspect to the quarterback position and what your offense can look like. How does that change what you're doing when you got a quarterback that's so mobile and is going to break out of the pocket and take off any moment?
It's a blessing and a curse. When Mike Vick came in, if we got beat at the line of scrimmage and guys got in the backfield, he could make them miss pretty quick and make you look good. But at the same time, you never knew where he was going to be. A lot of what we do or what we did, I don't do it anymore, was based on leverage and positioning and keeping guys away from the quarterback. Well, with Mike Vick, you never knew where he was going to be. But it was fun to watch. I had a front row seat to watch a guy, in my opinion, that changed the quarterback position in the NFL, the way the position's played now, and the way front offices look for a quarterback that's not just a drop back guy. They want a guy now that can run it and can throw it. You don't have a lot of Tom Brady's, a lot of Peyton Mannings around the league. If you look around, it's guys that when protection breaks down, they can break and run when they need to.
Absolutely. I think when you look at the modern quarterback now, like you were talking about, you go back to Vic and he's that mold and what you're looking for. And before him, there were a couple of guys here and there, but it really kind of goes back even into the 80s with Randall Cunningham.
Right, I was about to say it. Yeah, Randall Cunningham was, I think, the guy that started that whole trend. And then Cardell Stewart, I think, was the next guy in line. And then Vic just took it to another level. And now you look up and Cam Newton, you see in Baltimore with, now I'm drawing a blank, Lamar Jackson. It's just unbelievable where that position has gone to. and it's fun to watch. I'm a football fan, and I enjoy watching it.
Absolutely. One of your coaches there in Atlanta, Dan Reeves, is one of those names that everyone looks up to and respects in the coaching world. What are some of your memories playing for him?
First off, but before we talk about coaching, he was just an unbelievable guy, an unbelievable mentor. He gave me a chance. He drafted me. He was the head coach that drafted me, that had faith in me. But his beliefs and his systems and the way he was old school. We had some of the toughest training camps that I ever had in the NFL when Coach Reeves was there. Not some of we had the toughest because he was hard-nosed, old school. But if you earned his trust, you had his trust. And, of course, he'd been around Denver with the Giants, the Dallas, been all over the NFL, and I'm just glad that our paths crossed and I had the opportunity to play for him.
Kind of switching gears, but staying with coaching, in 2007, you had one of the more interesting coaching moves in NFL history. From a player perspective, what was that season like, starting out with Bobby Petrino, and then in the middle of the season, he's gone?
That was the craziest season or the craziest couple years in my career. You go in, you have one of the most electrifying quarterbacks in the NFL and Michael Vick, and he goes and gets in trouble, and I think Bobby Petrino takes that job knowing that he's going to have Michael Vick as his quarterback and a dynamic offense, and then Mike is not there that season. Our offense is completely different. I mean, we just traded away Matt Schaub to Houston. It would have been great to have Matt as a backup plan, and then you have to go with, I think we had Byron Leftwich and Joey Harrington. Guys were trying to revive their career at the time. Not what Bobby Petrino signed up for, but I have zero respect for the guy, the way he left us hanging during that season. And, he's a heck of an offensive mind, but as a person, I don't have much respect for him at all.
I completely understand that. Looking back on your career, what's one thing that you tell your younger self entering either LSU or the NFL?
It's enjoy the ride, I guess. The way my career played out, my college days and my NFL career, I wouldn't change anything. I tore my ACL in my rookie training camp, but I think some of the things that it allowed me to do as far as growing as a pro, learning how to prepare at the pro level when I didn't have to worry about the physical part of it because I was on the IR my first year. So I really wouldn't change anything. I feel aches and pains every morning when I wake up, but I would do it all over again because it was an unbelievable ride.
Before we get into Saturday night's game, what are you up to these days?
Back in Baton Rouge, we loved Atlanta, but my wife's family and my family was from here in the Baton Rouge area. I raise some cattle, raise bucking bulls. I have an antique wood business. We buy wood from all over the country and turn it into flooring, beams. It's all repurposed wood. Between that, my kids, I have 4 kids, 2 boys and 2 girls. My youngest is a senior in high school, so enjoying that. We do a YouTube broadcast of the high school game here in Zachary, Louisiana, so I'm actually on the call for that and just enjoying life.
Sounds good. Well, looking at Saturday night in Death Valley, we've got Florida and LSU. And for my take on it, I'm looking at right off the bat, the LSU center's got a high ankle sprain and is probable, according to Coach Kelly, but that could put a lot of pressure on the offensive line, especially if Florida's defensive tackle, Caleb Banks, comes back this week. It's looking like he might be back. LSU's a 7.5-point favorite. This started out as a 9.5-point spread, so it seems like there could be some action on Florida that's kept that line a little bit closer. In the Clemson game, the LSU defense got a lot of pressure on Klubnik. It didn't lead to sacks, but it made him just uncomfortable enough. They're going to need to get pressure on Lagway and make him have happy feet. Those Weeks brothers, they got to be ready when he breaks containment and is on the move because he can beat you with his legs. Billy Napier this week, he was adamant that he would not give up play calling duties, but they need to pull out all the stops against LSU, and they need to have a few trick plays in their back pocket. Florida's taken a lot of heat this week, and I'm sure with the start of the SEC conference season, they're going to be fired up for this game. They're not going to lay down. They don't have quit. They're going to come out ready to go, and they had better be ready because you've got a ranked LSU team in a hostile environment, and then next week they're at Miami, home for Texas, and at Texas A&M, all ranked teams. For LSU, I think this should be business as usual. Nussmeier leads the way. He's got a solid passing game, puts them in the right spots. Find Aaron Anderson. Anderson's got 14 receptions for 172 yards through 2 games. Keep finding him. Good things will happen. Work in the ground game, attack on defense, everything that they've been doing. Play LSU football, and I think they don't have to do anything special. Florida, I think, needs to find something special this week to get that bad taste out of their mouth from last week. When you look at this game, what are you thinking?
When I first saw the point spread come out at 9.5, I was like, what the heck's going on here? Because I think it's going to be a closer game than that, even in the 7.5. I think this is going to be a field goal game. I told somebody today what makes me nervous when you have an SEC program with a lot of talent that has their back against the wall a little bit in Florida. It scares me a little bit. Luckily, we have them coming into Death Valley. A night game in Death Valley is always unbelievable. But when you have a guy like Lagway that can make plays with his feet, it can get interesting. The thing that scares me the most, and you mentioned it, is that Florida D-line. Having our starting center out, it's never good, but we have a guy that has stepped in and he played pretty well last game. The thing that scares me is our young right tackle, Weston Davis. He's kind of stuck out a little bit with that stable of defensive ends that Florida has. I'm sure they're going to put some pressure on him. With a healthy Harold Perkins in our defense, he's a guy that showed in the Clemson game he can be in that spy mode, and he's a guy, if Lagway decides to run, that can go, and he'll go get him, and he'll help eliminate the big play there. You talked about it with Aaron Anderson, with Barry and Brown. LSU has some receivers that Xavier Thomas, those 3 guys will come up big in this game. Having our big red zone threat, Trades Green, with MCL, who I don't think will play this week. I look for a guy like Chris Hilton, who hadn't been much of a factor in our offense, to get active this week and to get active down in the red zone.
They didn't handle USF well last week, and now you're coming into Death Valley. And the speed of LSU, both on the offense and defense, it's night and day from what they saw that they didn't handle with USF. Florida's got a really good running back and a really good offensive line that so far neither one have gotten going. The offensive line's just kind of been a little clunky so far. Jaden Baugh, the running back for Florida, he hasn't gotten going. If I'm Billy Napier, give the ball to Baugh and let him run. Try and slow things down a little bit. Let's try and take a little pressure off of Lagway. Let him settle into the game a little bit. If you come out throwing and you're not able to establish the run, that's going to put a lot of pressure on Lagway. He's going to press, and that's when turnovers start to happen.
Yeah, and I think that'll be Coach Blake Baker, who's done an unbelievable job so far with this defense and the guys that he has. He's going to try to make this game to where Florida has to put it in the air. And I think if you get in that situation, if Nussmeier can get our offense up a couple scores and make Lagway one-dimensional, have to throw the ball, then the heat is really going to dial up with the blitzes. And then when Coach Baker sends the Weeks brothers or Harold Perkins on pressures, he has some DBs in the back end that can really cover. And I think that's what makes this LSU defense so scary.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned that you think this is probably about a field goal. I agree with you that the 9.5 was crazy. It's come down to 7.5. That might still be a bit much. I think this is going to be a low-scoring, typical SEC strong defensive game. I've got LSU winning 20-14. Do you have a score, or I'm guessing you're taking LSU to win?
Yeah, of course. I'd never bet against the Tigers, even if I believe different. But I truly think LSU will win this one. We didn't have a great performance against Louisiana Tech, but I think that was the first Saturday night in Death Valley. But I think this is the true first Saturday night in Death Valley of the season when you get an SEC opponent in Florida coming in. I got the Tigers winning this one 24-20, but it's going to be a back and forth great game with a lot of excitement. I'm looking forward to watching them play.
Sounds good. Well, Todd, I'm so happy that you were able to come on with us today. We really enjoyed having you on Complete BS and your look at the LSU Florida game. Couch Coach Nation, make sure you like, subscribe, and share anywhere you can find podcasts. And you can find us on X and Instagram at Complete BS Pod. We're here with All-American from LSU, Todd McClure, and we got a couple bonus questions for you. So offensive line, that's the one part of football that is a team within a team. How do you guys work to build continuity to be able to work together? Because it's so unique versus any other position on the field.
Yeah, it is, and I think a lot of times is locker room time or it's hanging out together when you have some off time. Some of the best offensive line groups that I played on, whether in college or the NFL, we were really close off the field, and you learn to play off the little keys that each other has. You learn to communicate. So it's learning to gel not only on the field but off the field. But then once you start playing, it's learning the combination blocks, learning how each of you fit in pass protection, and it's something that you just can't throw 5 guys in and go expect them to be good. It's something that has to gradually build, and when you have that chemistry and you have guys that are talented, that's when it grows into something special.
Well, playing in the SEC, I'm sure you played against tons of really high-end defensive line players. And then, of course, in the NFL, everybody's a pro. Who's the hardest person you had to block in college and in the NFL?
In college, the hardest guy I had to block was my teammate, Booger McFarland, and I think that was part of the reason I was able to have success in college and in the NFL, because I lined up against Booger every day, and he made me be really good with my technique or else I was going to get embarrassed. So I give a lot of props to Booger for helping me develop. In the NFL, people ask me all the time, and it's Chris Jenkins. Chris Jenkins played at Carolina. Chris was 6'4", probably 320 to 330 pounds, depending on what year it was. He was quick as a cat, and if you didn't have your pass sets down or your hands weren't good, he would embarrass you, and you'd be on SportsCenter pretty quick.
Did you have any football mentors that you looked up to or went to for advice?
My teammates, like you talked about, Alan Faneca was a guy that was always a phone call away. He left the year before I did to go to Pittsburgh, play in Pittsburgh. But then when I got to the NFL, Bob Whitfield was a tackle that played for a long time in the NFL. He was a guy that always gave some great advice. And then all my teammates there, the guys that I played with in Atlanta, we all ran things back and forth off of each other, and it was just some good times.
Talk to me a little bit about your draft process. You were taken in the 7th round, and sometimes you'll hear players that they're happy to be drafted, or they didn't want to be drafted in the 7th round because maybe you're not going into the best situation. And as an undrafted free agent, you get a little bit more say in where you're going and be able to pick the right situation. What was your draft process like? Were you one of those that you're just happy to be drafted and always be able to say that you were drafted, or would you have wanted to have a little bit more flexibility?
Going into the draft, we were hearing anything from late 2nd round to 4th round. So I had my hopes built up that, back then it was the first 3 rounds were the first day. So we're sitting there with anticipation, hoping that I would go somewhere during that first day. And then the call never came. And after that first day that night, my agent received a couple calls. He got a call from Detroit, got a call from San Francisco 49ers that they were going to take me early the next day, and then things changed and never happened. So that was a long 24 hours sitting there thinking you were going to get drafted in the first day, and then the teams that called you that night didn't draft you. So, but I was fortunate. I wouldn't change anything. When I got the call from Atlanta in the 7th round, they had just went to the Super Bowl the year before in '98, got beat by John Elway and the Denver Broncos. So I thought I was going into a great situation. So I wouldn't change anything. If you don't get drafted, you never know in free agency if a team's going to give you a shot. So I was fortunate. It all worked out for me, and I wouldn't change anything.
You had a long run of consistency and durability. What was your key to being able to stay healthy and play as long as you did?
A few things that my mom, I think she prayed over me 24/7. So I never shy away from talking about that. Just blessed and fortunate. And I think a lot of people sometimes they overwork their body in the off season. I came back to Louisiana. I didn't touch a weight. I didn't run. I did manual labor, out here on the farm, and let my body rest and recover. And then it was time in March to get back to it. I went to grinding, and it was just, I think, awareness. I played basketball coming up. My dad was a basketball player and a basketball coach. I played the point guard position coming up, and I learned, and he taught us, seeing the court. And I think that helped me in football staying healthy, is because I could see what was going on around me and was able to protect myself. And, you just got to be lucky. And I was lucky after my rookie year. I didn't have any major injuries. I had a few minor things. But then you also have to learn to play through pain. So there were games where you're out there, you're not 100%, but your team needed you out there, and I was able to do that for a long time.
You mentioned that you're still a football fan and you watch a lot of football. When you're watching, whether it's LSU, other college games, the Falcons, are you able to look at the game and just enjoy the game, or are you looking at it more as from a technical aspect and just focusing in on the offensive line?
It was hard for me to retrain my mind and my eyes after I got done playing, because before, I was honed in on that center position and, seeing coverages and seeing linebackers alignments and the little things like that. But now I watch it as a true fan. Of course, when the huddles break, I'm looking at personnels and I'm looking at motions and I'm looking at stances and I'm seeing where linebackers are at, where safeties are rolled. But once the ball is snapped, I'm just watching the game like a fan, but I try to get a sense of what's going to happen offensively and defensively before the play snap, and then I watch it as a fan.
One more question before we wrap up. We talked about a couple of the coaches that you came across with the Falcons. Mike Smith is one that we hadn't. I always felt that he was a very underrated coach in the NFL. Tell me a little bit about your time with Mike Smith.
Mike Smith was a player's coach. He was a guy that truly cared about each guy on that team. I think one of the things with Coach Smith, and you see some guys, Coach Smith, he would tell you he wasn't the best in front of a mic or on the podium. He was good at motivating guys and getting guys to believe in him and trust in his system. Some of the best years of my career were under Coach Mike Smith, and he's a guy to this day, every 2 or 3 months, I get a text from or I get a call from, just checking in to see how I'm doing. He truly cared about each guy on his team, and I love playing for Mike Smith.
That's awesome. I from doing this and talking to former players and in my time in college athletics, you tend to find that the coaches that have the most success are those coaches that years and decades later still have a really close, strong relationship with their players. So I love hearing that about Coach Smith, because he's somebody that I always really respected how he took care of business, but I always felt like he didn't get enough recognition for what a really good coach he was.
I enjoyed my time, and he was a tremendous coach, and I think now he's enjoying making a little bit of money, and just he fishes a good bit. He's got a house in the mountains and just enjoying life, which I love that. Some guys have a hard time, some coaches walking away from the game because it's all you've ever known. You wake up and you study and you watch film and you see coaches retire and they think they're retired, and you look at Nick Saban, he's all over TV now talking about football, and it's hard. You don't see guys that are able to walk away, let it go, and just go be a normal person. I'm happy that Coach Smith was able to do that.
Well, you seem like you've adjusted really well to post-football career. How would you want to be remembered by the LSU Tiger Nation and the Atlanta Falcon fans?
As far as my teammates, I'd like to be remembered as a good teammate, a guy that set a good example, that worked anytime it was time to put in work, but also was a guy that you enjoyed hanging out with when we were just relaxing and just being a good person. And hopefully I was able to teach some of the guys that came after me the right way to prepare, the right way to play the game, and later on in the NFL, how to be a father, how to be a husband, and also be an NFL football player. For the Tiger fans, I hope they saw that I gave everything I had, because I bleed purple and gold, still do to this day. And same thing with Atlanta fans. I poured my heart and soul into that organization for 14 years and just blessed to have had the opportunity to play in both of those spots. Thank you guys for having me on, and y'all can check me out. Me and my son do a pregame, a halftime, and a postgame on all the LSU games, the snapback with T-Mac. Y'all go check me out, and even if you're not an LSU fan, we do some interviews with ex-teammates and just talk about football.
Todd, I really appreciate the opportunity to sit down and chat with you. Couch Coach Nation, you can like, subscribe, and share. To follow us more on Instagram and X, go to Complete BS Pod.
Thanks for listening to Complete BS. Be sure to subscribe, share, and follow us online. And tell us what you think of this episode. Use hashtag CouchCoachNation, and let's keep the conversation going.